Okay, picture this. You're lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, maybe with one leg hanging off the side because you're brave like that. And then, bam, you remember Joan of Arc existed. Not your average bedtime story, huh? This girl, this teenage girl, literally looked at a crumbling kingdom, shrugged, and said, "Yeah, I'll fix that," while wearing armor and hearing voices and riding into war like she was leading a school trip instead of a desperate fight for her country's soul. But let's back up, because before the fire and the war and the crown and all the drama, Joan of Arc wasn't Joan of Arc. She was just Joan, a kid, a village girl, with calloused hands and dirt under her fingernails and a brain full of saints. She was born in a blink-and-you'll-miss-it town in northeastern France, and out on the map that most cartographers didn't even bother labeling. The village was called Domremy, and it was surrounded by hills that looked like they were stolen from a storybook. Sheep, thatched roofs, fields that swayed like they were trying to dance, rivers that hummed lullabies when the snow melted. And it was in that slow, sleepy, utterly peaceful place that one of history's most terrifyingly determined humans came into the world. Around 1412, to a family that didn't have much, some land, some kids, and a lot of prayers. Joan's parents, Jacques and Isabel, weren't warriors. They weren't nobles. They were just farmers trying to keep their heads down while the world lost its mind. And oh boy, the world was losing its mind, because France at that moment was in full-on chaos mode. The 100 Years' War had been going on so long that most people barely remembered why it started. Towns were burned. Fathers never came home. England had straight up moved into huge chunks of northern France, like they were Airbnb the place. The rightful heir to the French throne, Charles the Dauphin, which is basically a fancy French word for uncrowned king, hadn't even been well crowned. His enemies called him the so-called king. And honestly, even his allies were kind of like, we'll see. But none of this mattered to Joan yet. Her world was smaller. It was sheep and bread and wool. It was waking up with a rooster, helping her mom knead dough, and learning to spin thread while the world outside her village was spinning into madness. She didn't go to school, because school wasn't really a thing for girls in rural 1400s France. But she was sharp. She listened. She watched. She absorbed. And she prayed. A lot. Like a lot. While other kids were running around with sticks pretending to be knights, Joan was slipping into church and kneeling in silence, whispering to God for hours like she was having a one-on-one meeting with the divine. People noticed. They didn't think it was creepy. They thought it was kind of beautiful. She was quiet, focused, like she knew something the rest of the world didn't. Meanwhile, outside the village, pure disaster. France was basically a jigsaw puzzle that someone had thrown across the floor. Civil war on one side, English occupation on the other. Half the country was arguing with itself, while the other half was getting stomped on by foreign boots. And in the middle of all this mess was the city of Orléans. Think of it like the last domino. If it fell, the English could march straight into the heart of France. Game over. Thanks for playing. But again, Joan was still just a kid. She hadn't fought a battle. She hadn't spoken to a noble. She hadn't even left Domremy. All she had was this feeling, this pull, this tiny, flickering fire that said, you were made for something bigger. No sword, no army, no plan, just faith, and a weird certainty that the world was waiting for her to do something insane. And if you're thinking, wait, this still sounds like a chill bedtime story, hold on, because the moment the voices start, that's when it gets wild. You gotta keep going? Because next it starts. The visions, the calling, the moment history tilts, and Joan of Arc stops being just Joan. Let me know when you're ready to dive into part 2. It only gets crazier from here. So, here's the moment where Joan's story goes from cute rural life to wait, what did she just say? She was 13. Most 13-year-olds are worried about zits, crushes, and why their parents won't let them stay up past 10. But not Joan. Nope. Joan was out in the garden, or maybe the fields. The reports are fuzzy, just vibing with nature, when boom. Voices. Not the, I forgot my AirPods and kind of voices. We're talking divine surround sound, bright light, warmth, word that wrapped around her like a blanket and simultaneously yanked her entire future into a different direction. And it wasn't just some mysterious mumble in the bushes. These voices introduced themselves by name: Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, Saint Margaret, saints, literal saints. Not people you expect to hear from on a casual Tuesday afternoon. Joan didn't scream. She didn't run. She listened, and look, she didn't blab about it immediately. This wasn't the kind of thing you brought up at the dinner table like, "Hey, Mom, Dad, God just gave me a side quest." She kept it to herself at first. Wouldn't you? Because, who would believe her? But the voices didn't stop. They came again, and again, and again, not like nagging ghosts, not like a horror movie. They were calm, gentle, powerful, like if light itself had a voice. And the message? France is dying. You're going to save it. Just that. No pressure, Joan. You're 13. You don't know how to fight. You've never left your village. You can't read. You don't even own a proper pair of shoes. But sure, let an army save a country. Crown a king. Cool. Honestly, if this were a modern movie, we'd all be like, this girl's a chosen one. Cue dramatic music. Fade to black. But this wasn't fiction. This was a real teenager in the middle of a crumbling kingdom being told by holy voices that she was the only one who could flip the script. And here's the wild part. She believed it. Not because she was full of herself. Not because she wanted glory. But because the calling felt true. Like, deep in her bones true. It wasn't ambition. It was purpose. And the saints? They told her to wait. Not forever. Just until the time was right. Be patient. Stay faithful. Stay pure. Keep your eyes on the mission. So she waited for years. She didn't rush off into battle with a wooden sword and a war cry. She stayed in Domremy, prayed, grew, learned, listened. All the while, the fire inside her burned hotter. To the people around her, Joan still looked like the same quiet, devout girl. But inside, she was transforming into something no one saw coming. A spark waiting to ignite. And while she was holding this secret, the world around her just kept falling apart. More towns burned. More soldiers marched. The English were tightening their grip. The French crown was still uncrowned. And Orléans, still holding on by a thread. That's when the voices got louder, more insistent. It was time. No more waiting. Joan didn't freak out. She didn't panic. She didn't question whether she was crazy. She just accepted it. Because when heaven speaks to you like that, you don't ghost a call. You don't hit decline. You pick up. You say yes. She was ready to leave everything she knew behind, her family, her village, her quiet life, and walk straight into a war zone. Alone. Imagine being that sure of something. Imagine carrying that much belief in your chest that even when the whole world thinks you're ridiculous, you keep walking forward anyway. Because that's what Joan did. She didn't go looking for approval. She didn't draft a 5-step battle plan. She just found the nearest place with soldiers, knocked on the door, and said, "Hi, I'm here from God. I need to speak to Prince." Seriously. Next up, the door she knocks on. The guy who laughs in her face. And how a teenage girl who's never ridden more than a donkey ends up riding straight into history. So Joan grabs her courage, packs it up with zero military experience and all the faith in the universe, and heads out. Destination? Vaucouleurs. This was the nearest town with any kind of real military presence. And more importantly, it had a commander named Robert de Baudricourt. Think grumpy war guy with too many responsibilities and absolutely zero time for teenage girls claiming divine missions. Joan walks in, straight up full confidence, and says something like, "Hey, so, God sent me. I need an army. Also, can you arrange a meeting with the Dauphin? Because I'm supposed to get him crowned." Baudricourt laughs. Hard. I mean, come on. This was a young girl in a peasant dress talking like she was the boss of France. No noble blood. No sword. No retinue. Just certainty. And the commander's like, "Okay, sweetie, why don't you run along and churn some butter?" But Joan doesn't budge. She keeps showing up. Every single day. She wasn't rude. She wasn't arrogant. She was just calm, steady, clear, like, I'm not going anywhere until you get with the program. And people started to notice. It's easy to ignore a wild-eyed fanatic. But Joan wasn't that. She didn't preach fire and brimstone. She didn't rant in the streets. She just kept telling the same story, with the same quiet intensity, like someone who knew what was coming and was just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Eventually, people started whispering, she doesn't feel crazy. She seems legit. I don't know. Maybe she's telling the truth? Baudricourt caved. He gave her a horse, a few soldiers, men who, let's be honest, were probably expecting this to be a total joke. Joan didn't even blink. She dressed in men's clothing for the journey, not to make a statement, but because it was safer. Because if you're a young woman riding through war-torn territory with English patrols lurking in the trees, you do what you have to do to not die. And just like that, she was off. She left behind everything. Family, childhood, safety, and set off on an 11-day ride through hostile land to find a prince who'd never heard of her in a castle she'd never seen, guarded by men trained to laugh in her face. 11 days, on horseback, in the mud, in the cold, with enemy forces all around. Most people would have curled up and cried halfway through. But Joan, she pressed on because she had one job, get to Charles, deliver the message, and change the game. And now we arrive at Chinon. Picture a big old medieval castle, towering over a quiet town. Inside, Charles the Dauphin, the maybe future king of France. A guy who was, let's be honest, kind of a wet blanket at this point. Unsure of himself. Surrounded by advisors. Basically allergic to risk. He hears there's a girl at the gates claiming she was sent by God. His reaction? Suspicion. Confusion. Curiosity. Definitely not. Awesome, let her in. In fact, he sets a trap. He dresses like a regular dude. Has one of his nobles sit on the throne in his place. The idea? If she's really guided by divine power, she'll know which one is him. No pressure, Joan. But the moment she walks in, she doesn't look at the throne. She scans the room and walks straight to Charles. No hesitation. No guessing. Just a quiet walk across a crowded hall, right up to the real prince. And she bows. Mic drop. People freeze. Because remember, she had never seen him. No portraits. No drawings. No tweets. Nothing. She just knew. And then she tells him everything. The visions. The voices. The mission. The crown.
That he's the rightful king. That he's meant to be crowned at Reims. And that she's going to make that happen. Charles? Still skeptical. So he does what every insecure monarch does. He sends her off to be interrogated by a bunch of theologians, scholars, bishops. Basically a room full of old guys with quills and suspicions. They grill her for days. They want to find flaws, inconsistencies, evidence of witchcraft or madness or just good old-fashioned lying. But she doesn't break. She speaks plainly, humbly, never claiming greatness, just conviction. And eventually, even the doubters start whispering, she's different. Charles gives in. He hands her a sword, a banner, and, get this, command of troops. A teenage girl who had never held a weapon is now leading soldiers. Because something about her made everyone else want to believe too. And that's where we leave her. At the head of an army. Riding out not for glory, not for vengeance, but because a voice told her to lift the siege of Orléans and crown a king. And she said yes. Still want more? Next up, Joan marches to war. And France? Yeah, it's not ready for what's coming. Alright, so now we've got Joan, barely 17, wearing borrowed armor, riding a horse like she's done it her whole life, with a banner instead of a sword, leading an army to Orléans. Yes, that Orléans. The one that had been under siege for months. Starving. Surrounded. On the brink of collapse. You know that feeling when your phone is at 1% and you're stuck in traffic with no charger in sight? That was Orléans, but with more swords and fire and way more at stake. Everyone thought the city was toast. Morale? Non-existent. Supplies? Almost gone. French commanders? Arguing with each other. English forces? Feeling very confident. Then word spreads through the ranks. A girl is coming. Not a seasoned general. Not a nobleman with a private army. A girl, dressed in white armor, carrying a flag, talking about God like he's her campaign manager. People don't know what to think. Some think it's a joke. Others whisper about miracles. And when Joan actually shows up, boom, the entire vibe of the city shifts. Soldiers line the walls just to see her. Civilians peek out windows. Kids run after her horse like it's a parade. Hope, which had been missing for months, suddenly peeks its head out of hiding. And here's the thing. Joan doesn't act like she's just lucky to be there. She walks in like she belongs. She doesn't talk strategy like a grizzled veteran. She talks faith. She talks courage. She talks like someone who knows they're about to flip the script, and believes everyone else can too. The English mock her. They call her a witch, a lunatic, a peasant with delusions of grandeur. Joan says nothing. No clapbacks. No insults. Just action. She leads charge after charge. At the front. Not in the back behind 20 guys in a wall of shields. No, she's out there. Her banner flying above the battlefield like a lighthouse in a storm. And get this, she gets shot. An arrow right in the shoulder. Brutal hit. Carried off the field. And what does she do? Rest? Nope. She gets bandaged, shrugs off the pain like it's a paper cut, and comes back to lead her troops that same day. The soldiers lose their minds. Because now it's not just the girl from the visions. It's the girl who took an arrow, lived, and came back swinging. Her bravery wasn't wild or reckless. It was contagious. Men who had been crouching behind battlements started charging like they were invincible. Fear got replaced with adrenaline. And Joan? She kept that banner high. And what a banner. Big, white, painted with golden lilies and the names Jesus and Mary at the top. In the center? Christ holding the world in his hands. She didn't carry it as decoration. She carried it as a promise. A reminder. A rallying point. It wasn't just cloth. It was purpose. And yeah, it worked. Even the grizzled commanders, guys who had seen 100 failed campaigns, started taking orders from a teenage girl because, well, she made them believe again. Her camp was strict. No swearing. No looting. No mistreating women. You want to ride with Joan? You clean up your act. Period. And somehow this teenage peasant girl enforced that not with threats, but with presence. She didn't scream. She didn't demand. She just was. And people followed. They didn't just follow her into battle. They followed her into faith. Because when someone like Joan walks through fire with that much calm, you start to wonder if maybe God really is on your side. Then it happened. May 8, 1429. After months of hopelessness, the English, packed up and left. Siege lifted. Orléans was free. The city erupted. Church bells rang. People cried in the streets. Men hugged. Kids cheered. And in the middle of it all, Joan, a girl with a banner. Covered in dirt and blood and something else entirely, purpose. She had done it. What seasoned generals couldn't pull off in months, she had made happen in days. And the craziest part? She wasn't done. This wasn't her final mission. It wasn't even the middle. Because the voices weren't saying, nice job, take a break. They were saying, you've got a king to crown. Get moving. So yeah, Orléans was the victory no one saw coming. But the real miracle was just around the corner. You ready to march with her to Reims? So imagine this. The dust from Orléans hasn't even settled, and Joan's already looking east, eyes locked on Reims. Because in her mind, lifting a siege was step 1. Step 2? Crown the king. Officially. Properly. In the ancient cathedral of Reims, just like it's supposed to be done. And to her, this wasn't just about politics. It was spiritual. Symbolic. Sacred. You don't just say someone's king. You take him to the one place in France where kings have always been crowned, anoint him with holy oil and prove to the people, and to God, that he's legit. But here's the catch. Reims is deep in enemy territory. Like super deep. The road to get there snakes through towns flying English flags and full of Burgundian soldiers who'd love nothing more than to make sure this coronation never happens.
Charles, remember him, our maybe king, is not exactly brimming with courage. He hesitates. Big time. His court is full of cautious whispers. It's too risky. We should negotiate first. Let's wait and see. But Joan? Joan looks around and goes, the way is hard, but I was born for this. Read that again. Born for this. She doesn't care how dangerous the route is. She doesn't care how many bridges are burned or gates are closed. She believes, fully, that the voices didn't get her this far, just to stop short of the finish line. And somehow, that fire inside her starts lighting up the people around her too. So Charles, after some serious hand-wringing, agrees. Troops are gathered, supplies loaded, and the march begins. At first, it's dicey. They move cautiously, eyes scanning every tree-line, every village. The English are watching. The Burgundians are watching. And no one's sure how this is going to play out. But then, something strange happens. Town after town starts surrendering. Not with a fight, not with bloodshed. They open their gates, voluntarily, because word has spread. The girl in white armor is coming. The one who freed Orléans. The one who talks to saints. The one who rides to the front with a banner, not a sword. People believe in her. In some towns, citizens throw flowers in her path. In others, they kneel. Grown men weep when they see her. Because this isn't just a military campaign anymore. It's a movement. Joan's not just leading soldiers. She's leading a spiritual awakening, a rebirth of hope. And France, broken and bloodied for years, is finally beginning to stand again. Soldiers stop swearing. Hardened mercenaries start attending mass. Commanders follow orders with purpose instead of pride. It's like the whole army is being pulled towards something holy, and Joan is the center of it. Even Charles starts changing. He stands straighter, speaks with more confidence. He starts to look like a king, not because he found his own courage, but because he's walking in the shadow of a girl who somehow never lost hers. And it's not just France that notices. The English, they're rattled. They can't figure her out. She doesn't fight like a strategist. She doesn't lead like a general. She moves like someone fulfilling a prophecy. They call her names. Witch, demon, illusion. But you can hear the fear behind the insults. Because every town she passes, every gate that opens, every battle not fought, it all makes her seem more unstoppable. And that banner? Still flying, still white, still pure, still saying, God is with us. And just when it feels like maybe nothing can go wrong, the tension creeps in. Because every movement is big, every wave is strong, eventually crashes. Joan doesn't know it yet, but the same court that once gave her a sword is now growing uneasy. Power is shifting. Nobles are whispering. Politicians are plotting. And the closer she gets to Reims, the closer she gets to delivering everything she promised, the more dangerous her light becomes. Because in a world used to kings and crowns and thrones, a girl leading with faith is a threat. But for now, the spires of Reims are rising on the horizon. The crown is within reach. And Joan, she's not slowing down. Not for anyone. You ready for the coronation? Because next, France holds its breath. Here's Section 6, where Joan reaches a moment she's been fighting for, and something sacred unfolds in the most dangerous place in France. Reims. For centuries, that word meant one thing in France. Kingship. It's not just a city. It's the city, the place where French monarchs get that sacred stamp of approval, anointed with oil, crowned under heaven's gaze, sealed by tradition older than most kingdoms. And now, Joan is here. She made it after riding through war zones, dodging enemy patrols, walking into rooms full of doubt and fear and shifting power. She's at the gates of Reims. And here's the twist no one predicted. The gates open. No resistance. No delay. Just open arms from a city that had every reason to be afraid. And instead chose hope because they know what this moment means. France, for the first time in years, has a king. Not just a name. Not in theory. In full, blazing, church-blessed reality. And they have a teenage girl in white armor to thank for it. Inside the cathedral, things move fast. Torches are lit. Robes prepared. The holy oil is brought out from wherever they keep the really sacred stuff. Nobles put on their best fake smiles. Priests start practicing their chants. Trumpets are tuned. Everyone's pretending they've been planning for this all along. But let's be real. This entire coronation is happening because of Joan. And she says nothing. She stands in the background, dusty, armored, calm, watching it all unfold. Because She didn't do any of this for applause. She didn't ride through mud and blood for fame. She did it because the voices told her this was the mission, and she finished it. July 17th, 1429. The Archbishop anoints Charles. The crown is placed on his head. And suddenly, this unsure, timid, so-called king is no longer a question mark. He's the real deal. Charles VII, King of France. The people in the cathedral erupt, cheering, crying, chanting his name like they've just woken up from a decade-long nightmare. The bells of Reims ring so loud, you could probably hear them in England, outside in the streets. The entire city is pulsing with joy, people hugging, kneeling, shouting thanks to heaven. And at the center of it all, not on the throne, not in the spotlight, Joan, standing there, banner in hand. She insisted it be present. That same banner she carried into battle, through Orléans, across bridges and blood-soaked fields, over fallen comrades and broken doubts. To her, it wasn't just a symbol. It was a witness. It saw everything. And now, it was here, at the altar, like a final signature on a contract between heaven and earth. Joan didn't need a medal. She didn't need a title. She just needed to see it happen. And it did. France had a king again. The country had been brought back from the edge. And this girl, who'd walked out of a village no one could find on a map, had dragged an entire kingdom behind her into the light. But here's the thing about peaks. They don't last. The crowd is still cheering. The choir is still singing. But somewhere in the back, behind the incense and joy, a chill is starting to creep in. Because when you do the impossible, when you succeed beyond anyone's expectations, you start making the wrong people nervous. Kings don't like being overshadowed. Courtiers don't like being reminded they did nothing while a peasant girl saved their country. And Joan, she doesn't play politics. She doesn't flatter. She doesn't scheme. She just tells the truth. And suddenly, that's more dangerous than any army. But we'll get there. For now, hold on to this. Joan did it. She fulfilled the mission. She crowned the king. She changed history. And she didn't ask for anything in return. Just one girl, one banner, and an unshakable belief that if you're called, you answer. Next, the tide turns. Not on the battlefield, but in the court, because the real threat to Joan of Arc isn't the enemy with a sword. It's the ally with a smile. So, Joan did the thing, crowned the king, delivered the victory, completed the divine mission she'd been shouting from rooftops for years. She should have been France's national treasure, right? Like, hey, thanks for saving our kingdom. Here's a mansion and a holiday in your name. But nope, what does she get? Side eyes, whispers, doors slowly closing. Because in the echo of those Reims cathedral bells, something shifted. The fire she lit, it started to scare people. See, before the coronation, Joan was convenient. She was useful, an unpredictable weapon that kings and nobles could ride into battle and then disown if things got messy. But now, she had become a symbol, bigger than any noble, louder than any politician, stronger than the king's own advisors. And power doesn't like competition. Charles, freshly crowned and surrounded by nobles in gold-threaded robes, starts pulling back. His urgency fades. The fire in his belly cools. Why take risks now? He's got the crown. The people love him. Peace sounds nice. Joan, on the other hand, still fired up. The voices haven't said, nice job, time to chill. They're saying, get back out there, keep going. France isn't done yet, because Paris is still under enemy control. Burgundian strongholds still choke the kingdom. There's so much more to do, but every time she opens her mouth, she gets brushed off. Suddenly, Joan's not the miracle. She's the problem. The court doesn't say it out loud, but you can feel it. Oh, she's so emotional. Oh, she doesn't understand diplomacy. Oh, we don't need to fight. We're negotiating now. You know, the usual excuses powerful men make when they want a woman to stop talking and go away. But Joan doesn't go away. She keeps pushing, keeps leading troops, keeps knocking on doors. She doesn't need an army of thousands. She'll take 100, she'll take 10. She just needs to move. And for a while, she still does. She rides into smaller towns, frees them, encourages her men, keeps her banner high. But it's getting harder. The reinforcements don't show up like they used to. The support from the court dries up. Supplies get lost. Decisions get delayed. Even Charles, the guy she literally crowned, starts acting like she's a little too much. Like she's a phase he'd rather leave behind now that he's got his throne in comfy robes. It's betrayal with a handshake. And Joan, for all her visions and strength, starts to feel the weight of it. She's not dumb. She can see it happening. But she keeps going. Because her mission isn't about politics. It's not about approval. It's about obedience. To the voices. To the divine plan. She didn't march into war to make friends. She came to save France. And if that means being shut out by the very people she fought for, so be it. But the danger's growing. Because when your enemies hate you, that's one thing. But when your own side starts pulling away, that's when the real fall begins. Joan's still fighting, still burning bright. But her flame is starting to flicker. Not because it's weaker, but because the wind around her is turning. And what she doesn't know yet, the final blow, won't come from across a battlefield. It's already creeping up behind her, dressed in friendly colors. Next, Joan rides into a trap. And this time, there's no banner high enough to stop what's coming. Here's Section 8, where Joan's faith leads her straight into the jaws of betrayal. And for the first time, she's truly on her own. Spring, 1430. Joan's tired, but not done. The king's gotten cozy. The court's gone quiet. But the enemy, still very much alive and kicking. There's this town, Compiègne. Small, yes, but strategically crucial. If it falls, the Burgundians, those not-so-friendly French allies of the English, get one step closer to cutting through the heart of France. Joan sees the writing on the wall. She knows what happens if they lose this one. So even with her army thinned out, even with support from the crown basically non-existent, she rides out to defend it, because that's who she is. She was never about grand titles or waiting for permission. If there's a fight that matters, she's going to be there. Period. On May 23rd, she leads a small contingent outside Compiègne to confront an advancing Burgundian force. It's not a full-blown siege. It's more like a desperate attempt to hold the line. Skirmishes spark. Confusion reigns. Chaos is king. Joan sees the tide turning. Her forces are outnumbered, overwhelmed, and she knows they won't survive unless they retreat back into the safety of the city. So she gives the order, fall back. The troops scramble toward the drawbridge. But then, something unthinkable. The gates close, right in front of her. Just slam. Locked. To this day, no one knows why. Some say the guards panicked. Others whisper about betrayal. Maybe someone got spooked. Maybe someone wanted Joan out of the picture. Doesn't matter. The result is the same. Joan is trapped outside. Her enemies surround her. She fights. Because of course she does. She swings. She pushes. She holds a line as long as humanly possible. But she's outnumbered, outflanked, and finally dragged from her horse and taken captive. Joan of Arc warrior, prophet, liberator of Orléans, crown bearer of kings, now a prisoner. She's dragged away in chains. No armor, no banner, just silence. And from the walls of Compiègne, no help, no cavalry coming, no last-minute rescue, just locked gates. And echoes. And the king, the one she risked everything for, the one she marched across enemy lines to crown, he does nothing. No gold offered, no army mobilized, no messages of defiance, just silence, like she never mattered, like she wasn't the reason he sits on a throne today. It's the kind of silence that hurts more than swords ever could, because Joan didn't expect loyalty from enemies, but from her own side, from the king, she never saw the knife coming. The Burgundians, meanwhile, are thrilled. They've just captured the most dangerous symbol in all of France. Not just a soldier, not just a leader, a myth. And now that they have her, they realize she's too volatile to keep. too sacred to kill themselves, too powerful to release. So they do what cowards always do when they don't know how to deal with someone who scares them. They sell her. Literally. They sell Joan of Arc to the English for 10,000 livres tournois, a fortune at the time. The deal goes down in hushed tones behind heavy doors. No witnesses, no honor, just a cold transaction. And just like that, she's transferred to the enemy, not as a prisoner of war, as a target, because the English, they don't want to defeat her on a battlefield. They want to destroy her in front of the world, make an example of her, unmake the legend, prove to everyone, especially themselves, that she was never sent by God, that she was just a foolish girl who got lucky. They're not aiming for justice. They're aiming for erasure. And Joan, she walks into this new prison with her head held high, because even in chains, she knows who she is. But what she doesn't know yet is that her greatest battle will be fought in silence, in a courtroom, with ink, not swords. And mercy won't be on the agenda. Next up, Joan stands trial. And this time, the enemy doesn't wear armor. They wear robes. Here's Section 9, where Joan is dragged into a rigged courtroom and told to deny everything she's ever believed in, with the world watching in silence. Rouen, that's where they take her. Not to a battlefield, not to a prison camp, but to a cold, echoing stone fortress in the heart of English-occupied France. Because this trial is not about justice. It's about spectacle. The English don't just want Joan dead. They want her discredited, humiliated, unmade. See, killing a warrior is one thing, but Joan isn't just a warrior. She's a symbol. She made grown men cry. She inspired armies with a banner. She flipped the war just by showing up, and worst of all, she did it without them. So they put her on trial. But it's not really a trial. It's a performance. The judge, Bishop Pierre Cauchon, loyal to the English crown, biased from day one. The charges? Not treason, not violence, nothing battlefield-related. Nope, they're going after her for heresy. They say she dressed like a man. She did for protection. They say she heard voices. She did, divine ones. They say she claimed to be guided by God because she was in her heart. She never doubted it for a second. They twist every truth into a lie, every act of courage into a sin. She's interrogated dozens of times, without rest, without counsel, without mercy. They ask the same questions over and over, trying to trap her, trick her, make her contradict herself. But Joan, she doesn't crack. She's 19, in chains, surrounded by scholars and bishops who want her burned at the stake. And she still answers with clarity. She doesn't get defensive. She doesn't shout. She tells the truth. When they ask her if she believes she's in God's grace, they think they've got her cornered. Say yes? That's arrogance. Heresy. Say no? You're admitting you're guilty. Joan's reply? If I am not, may God put me there. If I am, may he keep me there. Boom. Perfect. A line so humble, so honest, that even her enemies pause. Because Joan isn't clever like a politician. She's convicted, and they can feel it. But the trial drags on, because the English need a verdict, not the truth. They keep pressing. About her clothes, her visions, her mission. They demand she recant, deny the voices, say she made it all up. She doesn't. She can't. To her, those voices were everything. They were the reason she stood at Reims, the reason France had a king, the reason she survived arrow wounds, siege fires, and betrayal. Denying would be like setting her own soul on fire. But the court wants a confession. They want her broken, trembling, apologizing for who she is. And so, after weeks of psychological torture, isolation, threats of execution and damnation, they push her to the edge. And she falters. Just for a moment, she signs a confession, says she'll wear a dress, agrees to submit to the church. Everyone breathes. The execution is delayed. But Joan, she realizes what just happened. They weren't saving her soul. They were silencing her. And Joan, the girl who faced down armies, Can't let that happen. So a few days later, she takes it all back, puts on the clothes again, stands tall again, and tells the world. She meant every word. She heard those voices. She believed that mission. And she's not going to deny it just because men in robes are scared of a girl with purpose. The court goes cold. They've got what they need now. She's relapsed, rejected the church's mercy. And that means one thing. Sentence. Death. By fire. They won't let her go. They won't risk her rising again. Because they know she was never just a soldier. She was a spark. And sparks? They're dangerous. Next up, Joan faces the flames. And still, she doesn't beg. Here's section 10, where Joan walks to her death with more strength than the cowards who condemned her, and leaves behind something even fire can't destroy. May 30th, 1431. The sky over Rouen is gray, like it knows what's coming. Word spreads fast. Joan of Arc is going to be executed. The square fills early, not with cheering crowds, but with people holding their breath. Some curious, some mourning, some just unable to look away. At the center of the marketplace stands a wooden stake, piled high with timber, dry, sharp, ready. Soldiers keep watch, but their eyes won't meet anyone else's. Even they know this doesn't feel like justice. Joan is led from her cell. Her head's been shaved, her wrists bound. She's 19 years old, and she walks without a fight. Without a word. There's no screaming, no thrashing, just a quiet, almost eerie calm, like someone who's already accepted the worst and isn't afraid anymore. She asks for a cross. A priest nearby, his hand shaking, quickly fashions one from 2 sticks and ties them with string. She takes it, presses it to her chest, and holds it like armor. She asks for another cross to be raised at eye level on the execution platform, so she can see it as she dies. Because Joan doesn't believe she's been abandoned. Not by God, not by the saints, not even now.
She steps onto the scaffold. The wind rustles her dress. The wood creaks beneath her feet. The executioner lights the fire. And the flames rise. They climb fast, like they've been waiting for her. The crowd gasps. Some turn away. Others can't move, can't breathe. Smoke twists into the sky. Heat pours out across the square. But Joan looks up, straight at the cross. Witnesses later say she said one word, over and over, until the fire took her. Jesus. Not a curse. Not a scream. Just faith. And when the flames finally die, there's nothing left. No bones. No relics. Just ashes. Which was the point. The English didn't just want her dead. They wanted her gone. No gravesite to honor. No remains to venerate. No saint to worship. Just smoke. Just silence. But here's what they didn't get. You can burn a body. You can't burn a legacy. Because what happens next is something they never saw coming. The people who once whispered behind her back, now they're weeping. The same priests who sat in silence during her trial, now they're questioning the verdict. And across France something stirs. A realization that this wasn't justice. It was murder. That Joan wasn't a heretic. She was a martyr. And martyrs don't disappear. They grow. They spread. They haunt the people who tried to bury them. And as Joan's ashes scatter in the wind, something else rises in their place. A story. A memory. A fire that no English blade or bishop's robe can touch. Next, France wakes up and starts asking the question that really scares the powerful. What if she was right? Picture the smoke over Rouen drifting east, sliding over shattered villages and half-burned fields, sneaking past rivers where rusted swords still sleep in the mud. That smoke carries rumors, and rumors travel faster than armies. Within days, everyone from Paris tavern drunks to backcountry shepherds has heard. The maid is gone, snuffed out by fire, betrayed by her own king, sold by men who speak French but wear English pay. At first there's just stunned silence. You know that feeling after a thunderclap when your ears ring and you're not sure what was said? That. Then the grief punches through. People who never met her suddenly realize they've been standing a little straighter since Orléans, praying a little harder, daring to picture a future that wasn't painted English red. Now the future feels shaky again, like a ladder with one rung missing. Mothers cry. Veterans curse. Priests fumble midnight homilies that keep slipping into tears. And everywhere, someone mutters the same question, Why didn't the king save her? Charles VII hears the murmurs inside stone corridors that used to echo with cheers. Advisors insist it'll pass. The war is turning our way, they say. Paris will fall, Burgundy will flip, we just need patience. But the king, new crown still warm on his head, can't sleep. Because every corridor has a shadow that looks suspiciously like a slim teenager in white armor, holding a banner higher than any royal flag. And on the front lines? Joan's old captains try to fight like the sky hasn't fallen. They still win skirmishes. The English are bleeding money and soldiers, but the victories taste bitter. Each campfire retells her final word. Jesus. Even the roughest mercenary goes quiet at that part, staring into flames like they might spell answers in the sparks. Yet war, annoyingly, doesn't pause for grief. The French push north. Castles flip allegiance. Burgundian dukes sniff the wind and notice English fortunes sinking. In 1435 the Treaty of Arras yanks Burgundy out of the enemy column and drops it, awkwardly, into France's arms. Suddenly the English hold on Paris feels like a snowman in July. In 1436 the capital gates creak open and French troops stroll in, not a glorious charge, more like taking back a house that never should have been rented out. Headlines would have screamed victory, if printing presses existed. Instead, church bells do the screaming. But the cheers never quite reach the pitch they hit back when Joan rode at the front. Everyone knows why Paris was possible. A domino trail that started with one farm girl saying yes to impossible voices. The dominoes keep falling, Normandy reclaimed, Aquitaine wobbling, until decades later the English cling to Calais like a cat on a curtain. Strategically, Joan wins the war after she's dead. Politically, though, the stain won't scrub out. Charles's conscience rattles louder each year. Courtiers try to hush it, but the bishops keep raising eyebrows. Documents from Rouen circulate, copied by sympathetic scribes. People compare her calm answers with the prosecution's slimy questions and think, wait, this was justice? By 1450 the whispers are a roar. Charles can't tour a province without somebody shouting, clear the maid's name. So he does the one brave thing he never managed while she was alive. He orders a formal investigation. Enter 1456. Rouen again, but different vibe. Torches replaced by stacks of parchment, execution stake replaced by witness benches. Over 100 depositions. Soldiers who saw her ride, villagers who saw her pray, doctors who prodded arrow wounds and swore she never flinched. Even the old executioner confesses he felt terrible dread the moment the flames touched her, like he'd lit a match under heaven's throne. The verdict flips. Every charge, heresy, sorcery, cross-dressing nonsense, tossed out like rotten grain. The court declares Joan innocent. Wrongfully killed. A miscarriage of justice so big it needs its own cathedral echo. Charles signs the decree with shaking hands, maybe hearing her voice one last time. I was born for this. And France? France breathes. Not because paperwork can raise the dead, but because truth, finally, is louder than lies. The maid is restored. Statues pop up in town squares. Tapestries weave her banner next to lilies. Kids play Joan and the English, instead of knight and dragon. But history isn't done. For centuries roll by, revolutions, emperors, railroads, telegraphs, yet Joan refuses to fade. Soldiers in muddy trenches of World War I scribble her name on helmets. Suffragettes cite her in speeches. Artists paint halos around her steel cap. She becomes the patron saint of underdogs, the poster child for stubborn faith. The Church, cautious as ever, spends decades combing through miracles attributed to her intercession. Healings, impossible recoveries, tiny flashes of hope. And in 1920, with bells booming across St. Peter's, Joan of Arc is canonized. St. Joan. Official. Universal. Irrevocable. Think about that math. A peasant teen executed at 19 spends 489 years climbing from ashes to altar. That's patience on a cosmic scale. And here's the kicker. The English government that once branded her a witch? In 1922, they send a delegation to the ceremony. Diplomatic nod, awkward smiles, silent admission. Yeah, we were wrong.
So what do we do with her story now? Maybe this. When the world says sit down, stand up twice. When every expert laughs, keep knocking. When the cost looks fatal, remember a girl who stepped into fire whispering the name that got her into this mess in the first place. Asterisk Jesus asterisk. And walked out the other side as light. And if you're still awake, still listening, hit that like button in your heart, or, the actual like button. Because next we're zooming out. How Joan's legacy changes the way we define courage itself. Spoiler, it's less about swords, more about stubborn hope. Ready? Fast forward a few centuries in the blink of a goose-feather quill. France has swung through kings, guillotines, emperors, and more governments than Joan had siblings, yet her name keeps slipstreaming past every regime change like it's immune to history's recycle bin. Revolutionaries in 1789 wave her banner, while toppling the very monarchy she died to save, shouting, "Liberty, equality, Joan of Arc vibes." Then Napoleon grabs power and, surprise, plasters her image on recruitment posters, because nothing sells a grand French comeback like the girl who already pulled one off. Meanwhile, poets and painters fight over who gets to claim her for their century. Romantic hero, nationalist mascot, saintly martyr, proto-feminist, pick a lens, she fits. Skip to 1870. France loses the Franco-Prussian War, morale faceplants, and who rides back onto the cultural stage? Joan, of course. Political cartoons show her armor patched with the tricolor. School children memorize her timeline the way modern kids recite Pokemon evolutions. By 1909, she's beatified, which is Catholic for saint-in-waiting. And pilgrims trek to Domremy like it's the original superhero origin site. 10 years later, World War I detonates. Trenches carve the countryside, and French soldiers scrawl Jean Veil, Joan watches, on dugout walls. They keep tiny pocket medals with her likeness beside grenades, convinced the same girl who once shrugged off arrows might just nudge a shell wide. Then 1920, Canonization Day. St. Peter's Basilica thrums, trumpets flare, and delegates who've been enemies on the Western Front sit shoulder to shoulder, pretending they totally planned this whole unity vibe. Pope Benedict XV reads a decree. Bells hammer skyward. Newspapers from New York to New Delhi headline Farm Girl Saint. Only took 500 years. Back in Orléans, they stage a torchlit parade so bright pigeons think it's sunrise at midnight. Even London papers run respectful columns. A diplomatic, "Our bad, 5 centuries late." From there, her legacy mutates like a very determined meme. Suffragettes wield her as exhibit in that women can lead anything, including parliaments. Vichy propagandists try to hijack her image. The French resistance yanks it back, sneaking Joan Live graffiti onto occupied walls. Simone de Beauvoir name-checks her in feminist essays. Carl Dreyer turns her trial into silent film lightning. Video game designers eventually give her polygon armor and a health bar. She refuses to fossilize. Every era peels off the parts it needs. Courage under fire, faith without apology, raw refusal to wait for permission, and leaves the rest gleaming for whoever's next. And here's the fun, slightly mind-melting twist. Scholars still bicker over everything from her accent to her astrology sign, yet the doubt just keeps sharpening her outline. The more angles you examine, the clearer her center glows. Because the hard data points are movable. Illiterate teen, voices, armor, banner, battlefield, coronation, flames, ashes, echo. That spine of impossible facts dares every generation to reverse engineer courage. Not a feeling, not hype, a decision made once and renewed every morning before breakfast. So, what's courage in 2025? Maybe it's hitting publish on that art piece no algorithm asked for. Maybe it's calling out a bully with your voice still shaking. Maybe it's showing up at the voting booth when cynicism says stay home. Big or small, it traces straight back to a kid in 15th century France who heard something calling and said, "Yeah, all right, let's go." Quick gut check. If Joan popped into your group chat right now, what impossible quest would she double tap and drag you onto? Hold that thought, because in our next stretch we're dissecting the anatomy of her decision-making, how a farm schedule turned into a war plan, how listening became leading, and how you can steal that blueprint without needing actual armor. Ready to pick up the banner? Stick around, hydrate, maybe stretch those hero muscles. We're diving back in next. Morning routine, collect water, feed livestock, pray for France's soul, repeat. That's literally how Joan's battle plan incubated. Basic farm chores plus brain-melting conviction. No vision boards, no white paper strategy docs. Just rhythms so steady you could set sundials by them. And here's the fun reveal. That simple loop is a skeleton of every impossible mission she'd tackle later. Step 1 was listen hard before you move. While neighbors swapped gossip over goat milk, Joan clocked hours in silent kneeling, treating prayer like reconnaissance. People assumed she was shy. Really, she was gathering intel from the only HQ she trusted. File under. When in doubt, update from source. Step 2. Act the moment the intel cracks open a door. Remember Vauquelins? She didn't workshop 50 scenarios. She heard go and literally walked to the gatehouse with nothing but a borrowed tunic, and the phrase, "God sent me." That's farm kid reflex. See a fence down. Fix it before the sheep wander. Delay equals disaster. Step 3. Make the mission contagious. She never once tried to out-lecture scholars or outrank nobles. She outbelieved everyone in a 5-mile radius. Belief is sticky. One peasant girl believing at 110% trumps a whole war council operating at corporate memo energy. Proof. Arrow in her shoulder. She still rides back into fray. Soldiers who've been coasting on 40% suddenly spike to 95, just keep up. Step 4. Contract for values, not perks. Joan's field rules were embarrassingly straightforward. No swearing. No stealing from civilians. Treat women like human beings. Notice she didn't bribe loyalty with loot shares. She offered integrity. Medieval HR nightmare? Maybe. Morale supercharger? Absolutely. When the banner's clean, people want to stand under it. Step 5. Delegate the glory upward. Every victory speech redirected to heaven. Or, if heaven was busy, to the troops. That's not humility theater. That's tactical politics. By deflecting credit, she vacuum-sealed her legitimacy. Enemies called her a witch because they couldn't find arrogance to stab. Allies rallied because she wasn't hogging spotlight calories. Step 6. Hold the line when the line evaporates. Closed gates at Compiègne? She fights anyway. Sold to the English? Still professes the voices. Trial rigged? She answers straight. Even when the scoreboard read 0-100 against her, she refused to sell her operating system for lighter chains. Turns out uncompromised code is hard to hack. Now, zoom that blueprint onto us. TikTok attention spans, inbox avalanches, existential dread served daily. Listening before reacting feels illegal in notification culture, yet it's the lever that lifts entire wars. Acting fast once clarity pings. That DM you're scared to send. Hit send before anxiety writes a novel. Making belief contagious? Your team's bored because you're at 60%. Crank to 110 and watch Slack light up. Contracting for values? Promote the intern who shares credit, not the one who hoards retweets. Delegating glory? Turns collaborators into co-owners. And holding the line? That's just Tuesday resilience, scaled. But remember the footnote burned into Rouen cobblestones. Conviction costs comfort. Joan's approach will not earn you unlimited PTO or universal applause. It will, however, carve a trench through apathy so wide that history can't pave over it. So, homework before we hit the next leg. Pick one arena, work, art, relationships, and audit it Joan style. What voices matter? What doors cracked open? Where's belief leaking? Patch, move, rally. Simple. Terrifying. Weirdly exhilarating. Hydrate. Shake out the jitters and reload that banner emoji, because next we're sprinting into the modern battlefield. How movements from civil rights to climate action jackhammered Joan's playbook, and what that means for your next daring project. See you on the front lines. Here's Section 13, continuing Joan's story by exploring how modern movements, from civil rights marches to climate activism, borrowed pages directly from Joan's centuries-old playbook. Joan's blueprint didn't end with medieval France. No way. It jumped eras, continents, generations, landing squarely in the playbooks of movements that shook the world centuries after she left it. Take the civil rights movement. America, 1960s. Seems worlds apart, right? But look closer. Martin Luther King Jr., standing at a pulpit in Alabama, channels the same relentless certainty Joan did when facing soldiers at Orléans. King knew exactly what Joan knew. You don't defeat entrenched injustice by politely asking it to leave. You confront it with unshakable belief, even when facing down hoses, dogs, and jail cells. Like Joan, King believed that divine justice wasn't just possible. It was inevitable. He wasn't alone. Rosa Parks, sitting on that Montgomery bus, echoed Joan's quiet but earth-shaking defiance. Parks didn't bore that bus planning history. She simply saw a moment crack open, just like Joan outside the gates of Awakens, and stepped forward. One small act, enormous ripple. Same playbook, different battlefield. Fast forward again, Greta Thunberg, teenage climate activist, outside the Swedish parliament holding her now iconic sign, "School strike for climate." Tell me that doesn't sound like Joan at 13, standing in the fields of Domremy, hearing voices and thinking, if nobody else acts, I will. Greta didn't wait for permission. She acted the second clarity hit. Just like Joan, her stubborn hope became contagious, spreading across millions of students worldwide. Same story in South Africa. Nelson Mandela, decades imprisoned, emerges preaching reconciliation, not revenge. Joan, betrayed by the very king she crowned, faced death without bitterness, pointing always to a higher purpose. Mandela, like Joan, traded easy retaliation for difficult forgiveness, turning former enemies into reluctant allies, changing history forever. Every generation grabs Joan's methods because they work, clear, bold, and terrifyingly simple. Step forward before you're ready. Ignore gatekeepers who whisper impossible. Plant your feet on moral ground and refuse to move, because courage isn't complicated. It's just costly. So, here's the gut check moment. What's your modern battlefield? Maybe you're staring down injustice in your community, environmental crises, toxic politics, or just everyday apathy. Maybe your fight is smaller, quieter, facing fear in your own career or relationships. Doesn't matter. The principles are identical. Listen carefully, act decisively, stand stubbornly, and above all, believe relentlessly. And here's the kicker. Joan wasn't perfect. Neither was MLK, Mandela, Rosa, or Greta. Courage isn't reserved for saints. It's claimed by humans messy and imperfect, just willing to keep showing up. But the trick to real, lasting courage? It's embracing that messiness. Joan didn't wait for perfect conditions, perfect clarity, or perfect support. She acted when it mattered, not when it felt safe. So, next time doubt whispers, remember Joan's armor. Next time fear says you can't, remember Rosa's seat. Next time despair says, why bother, remember Greta's sign. Courage isn't complicated. It's contagious. Ready for what's next? Because in the next section, we're flipping the camera onto you. How you can practically take Joan's legacy and weaponize in your life, step by step. Let's go. Here's section 14, where we shift the camera fully onto you, taking Joan's unshakable courage and turning it into something you can actually use. All right, enough history lessons. Now it's your turn. You've seen how Joan took on an entire empire armed with little more than raw determination and stubborn hope. Inspiring, sure, but inspiration without action? It's just background noise. So let's get practical. How do you steal Joan's playbook and actually do something with it? First off, pick your battlefield. And I don't mean grabbing a sword, please don't. Your battlefield could be a toxic workplace, a dream career you've shelved, a creative project gathering dust, or standing up against injustice you see every day. Joan didn't wait for some neon sign. She picked the battlefield right in front of her. What's yours? Next, identify your voices. Joan had literal saints whispering divine instructions. You? Probably less literal. But the voices still matter. Maybe it's intuition, your conscience, a gut feeling you've ignored too long, or advice from people you deeply trust. Whatever it is, tune into it. Quiet your distractions long enough to hear what's really pulling at you. Remember, Joan didn't have a smartphone buzzing every 5 seconds. Her clarity came from quiet moments, not noisy feeds. Third step, move before you're ready. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, terrifying, even. Joan didn't wait for an invitation or reassurance. She literally walked into an army camp and said, I'm here. Let's do this. Do not wait until the plan is perfect or your confidence is rock solid. Joan's secret wasn't bravery. It was action despite fear. Send the email. Launch the business. Say the uncomfortable thing. Courage isn't feeling ready. It's choosing to move when you're not. Fourth, recruit believers. Joan didn't try to convince everyone. She spoke plainly, honestly, and people either rallied or didn't. Find your people. Not just cheerleaders, but people who believe deeply enough to challenge you, push you, fight alongside you. Authentic courage attracts authentic allies. Don't try to win everyone over, just the ones who matter. Fifth, expect opposition and refuse to retreat. Joan knew what she signed up for. She wasn't surprised by resistance. Neither should you be. When the gate slams shut or the critics swarm in, you have two options: retreat into comfort or press forward. Joan chose the latter every single time. Decide up front you won't be bullied off your mission. The cost is high, but the reward? Freedom from regret. 6, and maybe hardest of all, give away the credit. This isn't modesty theater. It's strategy. Joan deflected praise upward to God and outward to her soldiers. Why? Because hoarding credit kills momentum. Share the wins freely. Let your teammates bask in the spotlight. Your mission grows strongest when no one cares or gets applause, only that the mission gets done. Finally, make stubbornness your superpower. Joan wasn't flashy. She was relentless. She didn't quit because quitting wasn't in the playbook. Whatever your fight is, commit so deeply that quitting becomes impossible. When friends tell you, you've done enough, smile and move forward anyway. Real courage means holding your ground, even when everyone else drifts away. Look, here's the bottom line. Joan's legacy isn't for museums. It's for your Monday morning. It's for the meeting you dread, the dream you shelve, the injustice you ignore because it feels overwhelming. She wasn't fearless. She was fiercely determined. So now it's on you. What battle are you walking into tomorrow? What gatekeepers are you ready to ignore? How much longer will you wait before moving forward? Next up, we're going even deeper. How do you turn Joan's courage from one-off acts into a daily habit that defines your life? Ready to embed courage into your routine? Stick around. Let's get real. Big, dramatic courage, the kind you read about in history books, can feel pretty far away when your alarm goes off at 7 a.m. You're probably thinking, sure, Joan's story is inspiring, but I have to do laundry, not lead an army. Fair, but Joan wasn't born courageous. She built courage into her daily routine. She lived courage the way you brush your teeth, consistently, quietly, without fuss. And that's exactly how it became unstoppable. So, how do you make courage routine? Let's break it down. First, start small, really small. Joan didn't leap from tending sheep directly onto the battlefield. She started by stepping into her village church, quietly whispering prayers she wasn't sure anyone heard. Courage starts microscopic. Maybe your small step is speaking up once a day in a meeting, setting a boundary with a friend, or posting your art even though it's imperfect. Make courage manageable daily, boringly normal. Second, build a habit of immediate action. Joan heard voices and acted quickly, no hesitation, no second-guessing. Apply this rule. When intuition strikes, give yourself exactly 3 seconds to act. Hit send. Say yes, stand up, walk forward. The longer you wait, the heavier hesitation gets. Quick moves shrink fear. Third, reframe discomfort as progress. Joan knew discomfort meant she was on the right track. Butterflies, shaky hands, or racing hearts aren't signs to quit. They're signs to lean in harder. Make discomfort your green light, not your stop sign. Learn to associate that nervous feeling with growth. Fourth, schedule daily bravery. Yes, actually schedule it. If Joan could turn village chores into courage training, you can do the same with your Google Calendar. Every day, block off 10 minutes specifically for something slightly uncomfortable, a tough call, an honest conversation, a creative risk. Watch how daily bravery becomes muscle memory. Fifth, track your victories. Joan had her banner, a constant visual reminder of every win. You need something similar. Maybe a journal, a note on your phone, a wall of sticky notes. Whatever helps you see and celebrate daily wins. Courage thrives on momentum. Victories, no matter how small, build confidence. 6. Learn from setbacks, then keep moving. Joan's journey wasn't smooth. She faced humiliation, injury, and betrayal. But each setback sharpened her resolve. After every failure, ask, what did this teach me? Then stand up again. Real courage isn't avoiding falls. It's rising quickly afterward. Finally, make courage about values, not outcomes. Joan never said, "I'll only fight if victory is certain." She committed actions aligned with her beliefs, regardless of the outcome. Define your values clearly: integrity, creativity, justice, and measure success by how consistently you uphold them, not by immediate rewards. Because here's the truth: Joan-level courage doesn't happen overnight. It builds quietly, day by day, through actions so tiny they barely feel brave at all, until suddenly, bravery is your default setting. Imagine waking up not hoping for courage, but expecting it. Imagine courage being so routine that taking risks feels as natural as breathing. That's where Joan lived, not in constant drama, but in quiet, persistent bravery. Ready to make courage your everyday normal? Keep going. Next, we'll dive even deeper: how to spread courage beyond yourself, building a culture that doesn't just admire bravery, it demands it. Stick around. You're just getting started. Here's Section 16, where we explore how courage, when shared, doesn't just transform individuals. It shapes entire communities, turning ordinary groups into unstoppable forces. Imagine this. Courage is no longer just something you feel individually. Now it's spreading. It's contagious, jumping person to person, igniting teams, workplaces, families, communities. Just like Joan turned hesitant soldiers into fearless warriors, you can spark courage in the people around you until bravery becomes your shared norm. So how exactly do you create a culture of courage? First, lead by example, loudly and publicly. Joan rode into battle at the front, not behind. She demonstrated courage visibly, repeatedly, and unapologetically. You want courage around you? Show it first. Share your struggles openly. Admit your fears and how you face them. People don't follow perfection. They follow authenticity. Next, make courage conversations routine. Joan's soldiers talked openly about fear, faith, and mission every night around their campfires. Start similar conversations. At work, in your friend group, even at home, regularly ask, "What's scaring us? And how do we face it?" Normalize the dialogue. Courage thrives when it's discussed openly, not whispered privately. Third, celebrate courage, even when it fails. Joan's men lost battles, but they celebrated attempts, bravery, and effort, not just outcomes. Praise attempted bravery, even if the result falls flat. This shifts your environment from perfection-obsessed to bravery-focused. The reward isn't always success. It's stepping up in the first place. Fourth, actively invite courage from others. Joan wasn't threatened by others' bravery. She inspired it. Ask others directly. How can you take a risk today? What brave thing will you do? Invite them explicitly. Sometimes people need just one invitation to unleash bravery they didn't know they had. Fifth, remove barriers to bravery. Joan cleared obstacles for her soldiers. Fear of shame, fear of punishment, fear of isolation. Do the same in your group. Let people know mistakes won't destroy their reputation. Guarantee psychological safety. When people know the group won't abandon them after setbacks, courage explodes. Sixth, link bravery to shared values. Joan's banner didn't symbolize personal glory. It stood for collective faith, justice, and purpose. Identify what your group cares about deeply. Justice, creativity, integrity. Link acts of bravery directly to these shared values, so courage feels meaningful, not arbitrary. Lastly, institutionalize courage. Joan's courage outlasted her because it became part of France's identity. Create formal systems, regular bravery awards, routine meetings that specifically address courage, mentoring programs, to embed bravery deep into your group's DNA. And why does this matter so much? Because courage at scale changes everything. Imagine a workplace where fear never stops innovation. Imagine friendships built on vulnerability, not polite small talk. Imagine a family where honesty is the default, not the exception. Joan's true legacy wasn't military victories. It was shifting an entire culture toward boldness, resilience, and hope. You can create that legacy in your circle. You don't need an army. You need a clear commitment, open conversations, and the willingness to step forward first. So here's your mission. Start today. Share your bravest moment openly. Invite someone else's bravery. Celebrate someone's courageous attempt, especially if it didn't work. Make courage your culture, not just your story. Next up, we're hitting the home stretch. How to keep your courage alive when burnout creeps in, cynicism whispers louder, and your mission feels impossibly distant. You ready? Of course you are. Let's keep going. All right, let's talk about the one thing every brave person hits eventually, burnout. Because let's be real, courage isn't a sprint, it's an ultramarathon. Joan might have seemed invincible, but beneath that armor, she was human, just like you. She got tired, discouraged, and probably wanted to quit 1,000 times. The difference? She didn't let fatigue write her final chapter, and neither should you. So how do you keep your courage burning? Even when the world piles on setbacks, doubts whisper loudest, and you're just flat out exhausted? First, expect exhaustion and plan for it. Joan fought battle after battle. Fatigue was guaranteed. The trick? She rested intentionally, not accidentally. Learn from her. Schedule regular breaks, not as luxuries but as necessities. Your courage depends on your rest. It's fuel, not indulgence. Second, reconnect with your deeper purpose regularly. Joan constantly returned to prayer and reflection because her purpose anchored her. When courage wavers, reconnect to your why. Ask yourself daily, what's at stake? Why does this matter? Courage lasts when the mission is clear, especially on the hardest days. Third, normalize doubt but don't surrender to it. Joan faced relentless skepticism from her own side and from herself. She didn't ignore doubt. She confronted it head-on. Doubt isn't a sign you're weak. It's proof you're doing something worthwhile. Acknowledge doubt, then challenge it directly. Doubt fades when courage speaks louder. Fourth, celebrate tiny wins obsessively. Joan's journey wasn't one big victory. It was thousands of small steps. If you only wait for huge wins to feel brave, you'll exhaust yourself. Celebrate daily progress, no matter how small. Did you speak up? Did you try something new? Recognize it. Courage built from small successes stacked together. Fifth, lean on your allies openly. Joan had her soldiers, men who believed deeply enough to keep fighting alongside her. Don't carry courage alone. Let others know when your bravery tank runs low. Courage isn't solitary. It multiplies when shared. Admit when you're struggling. Let allies help refill your bravery. 6. Accept setbacks as part of the process, not proof you're failing. Joan lost battles, faced betrayal, and even imprisonment. Setbacks are guaranteed. Quitting isn't. Courage isn't flawless victory. It's relentless persistence. After each setback, ask, what now? And keep moving. Courage means forward motion, despite obstacles. Finally, remind yourself courage isn't perfection. It's persistence. Joan wasn't brave because she never fell. She was brave because every single time she fell, she stood back up immediately. Courage doesn't mean feeling strong every moment. It means deciding to keep going when you feel weakest. Look, every brave journey has valleys. Moments when quitting feels sane, safe, and easy. Joan felt it. MLK felt it. Mandela felt it. Greta feels it. You're allowed to feel it too. But courage is deciding, over and over, to keep stepping forward anyway to SO. When exhaustion creeps in, rest but don't stop. When doubt whispers loudest, acknowledge it, but don't surrender. When setbacks pile up, learn, but don't quit. Because the courage that changes the world isn't temporary. It's stubborn. Take a deep breath. You're not done yet. Next, we hit the final stretch. How Joan's courage created a legacy that's still reshaping the world today, and exactly how you can build your own legacy. Ready to finish strong? Let's keep moving. When Joan stepped onto that scaffold in Rouen, she probably wasn't thinking about legacy. She was just living courageously in that moment. But here's the secret nobody tells you. Courage lived deeply in the present always becomes legacy in the future. Joan didn't aim to be remembered. She aimed to be faithful, brave, relentless. And because of that, her story has echoed louder every century since. And that raises a big question for you. What legacy are you creating right now, whether you realize it or not? First step to building your legacy. Define clearly what you stand for. Joan's legacy is unmistakable. Courage, integrity, conviction. What about you? If people had to sum you up in 3 words, what would they say? Bravery? Creativity? Kindness? Start living those words deliberately every single day. Legacy isn't accidental, it's intentional. Second, let your life story be contagious. Joan's courage didn't die with her, it multiplied. Her bravery inspired soldiers, scholars, revolutionaries, and activists centuries later. When you live courageously, you become proof for someone else that bravery is possible. Your courage isn't just personal, it's permission for others. Third, prioritize meaningful impact over instant applause. Joan didn't chase praise, she chased purpose. Fame fades quickly, but meaningful change lasts generations. Focus on impact, lives improved, communities strengthened, minds opened, not popularity. Legacy lasts where impact is deepest. Fourth, embrace sacrifices as investments. Joan gave up safety, comfort, and eventually her life. But those sacrifices weren't wasted. They became investments in freedom, justice, and hope. Every courageous choice costs something. Don't fear the cost. Fear wasting your chance to leave a mark. Fifth, live beyond yourself. Joan wasn't driven by ego. She was driven by something bigger. Her faith, her country, her mission. Legacy thrives when your life points outward, toward others, not inward, toward self-preservation. Courage multiplies exponentially when your purpose extends beyond you. 6. Keep going when no one's watching. Joan's legacy didn't form in public victories alone. It solidified quietly, behind closed doors, in prisons, through trials, through unseen moments of faithfulness. Your legacy isn't just built in spotlight moments. It's built when no one's watching. Courage behind closed doors is courage that changes generations. Finally, choose long-term influence over short-term comfort. Joan's decisions often sacrificed immediate safety for lasting freedom. Courageous legacy is always long-term focused. It asks, will this matter a century from now? If yes, step forward, even if it's uncomfortable right now. Imagine this. Years from now, someone else faces doubt or fear, and they remember you. Your courage inspires theirs. They step forward because you did first. That's legacy. It isn't fame or statues. It's your bravery living on, influencing generations you'll never even meet. Joan's story teaches us clearly. Your life will echo far beyond your lifetime. The question is, what echo do you want to leave? You don't need armies or empires. You need quiet, consistent courage. A daily choice to live bravely, speak honestly, love boldly. That's it. That's your legacy. And here's the good news. You're already building it. Right now. Make sure it's worth remembering. Next up is our final stretch. The big wrap-up, the takeaway that brings Joan's entire story crashing into your everyday life, helping you leave this video not just inspired but ready. Here's section 19, where we wrap up Joan's extraordinary story, pulling it from history books straight into your everyday life, transforming inspiration into action once and for all. All right, let's land this. By now, Joan's story has probably lit a fire in you. It's easy to feel inspired by someone who faced impossible odds, rose from nothing, and changed history before her 20th birthday. But inspiration alone? It's temporary. The real magic happens when inspiration becomes action. Joan wasn't special because she felt courage. She was special because she acted on it relentlessly. So, here's the challenge for you. Don't just admire Joan. Asterisk live like her. Asterisk. What does that actually mean? Glad you asked. First, stop waiting for permission. Joan didn't wait for someone to tell her it was okay to follow her purpose. She stepped forward without permission. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, for validation, or for approval. Your life isn't waiting for permission. It's waiting for you to say yes and move. Second, make courage your habit, not your exception. Joan's bravery wasn't occasional. It was her default mode. Every day, choose one brave thing. Speak up. Take risks. Move forward. Courage isn't a one-time event. It's daily consistency. One small act of bravery every day changes your entire life trajectory. Third, be willing to pay the cost. Joan knew courage wasn't free. It cost her everything. Don't expect your brave choices to be comfortable or easy. Expect fear, setbacks, and doubts, then face them anyway. Courage is expensive, but regret is even pricier. Choose your cost wisely. Fourth, Define yourself by purpose, not applause. Joan never chased approval. She pursued purpose. Know exactly what you're fighting for, justice, truth, creativity, and let that drive your every action. Live so clearly for something bigger that applause becomes irrelevant. Purpose sustains courage long after praise fades. Fifth, turn your struggles into strength. Joan's hardest moments, injuries, betrayal, imprisonment, weren't setbacks. They were stepping stones. Whatever struggle you face, see it as fuel for your courage, not evidence against it. Your strength grows strongest through struggle. Lean into it. 6. Trust yourself, even when the world doubts you. Everyone doubted Joan, her king, her church, even her family. She trusted herself anyway. Listen deeply to your intuition, your values, your convictions. Trust them fiercely. The world doesn't have to believe in you. You do. That's enough. And finally, start right now, not someday. Joan didn't delay her courage for later. She lived it today. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Don't let fear trick you into thinking you have unlimited time to be brave. You have right now. Use it. Step forward today, small or big. Just move. Here's the truth. Joan of Arc was extraordinary not because she was superhuman, but because she showed us what humans are capable of when they choose courage relentlessly. She was exactly like you, ordinary, afraid, unsure, and yet she changed everything. And now it's your turn. Your life is waiting. Your moment is right here, right now. Courage isn't reserved for legends. It's yours to claim today. Joan's banner passed through history, from battlefields to courtrooms, from revolutions to classrooms, and now it lands in your hands. The only question left is this. Will you carry it forward? The world needs your courage. Your voice, your action, your stubborn belief that better is possible. Pick it up, hold it high, and move forward. Ready to finish strong? Next up is our final moment. The ultimate takeaway. The thing you'll carry into your life from now on. Let's do this. So here we are at the end, or rather, at the real starting line. Joan's story was never about history. It was about you. Right here, right now. Because let's face it, every story you've heard, every moment of Joan's bravery, every battle she faced, it all boils down to one thing. Courage isn't something you have. It's something you choose. Every single day. Joan wasn't brave because she never felt afraid. She was brave precisely because she didn't feel afraid and moved forward anyway. Think about your own life right now. Maybe you're facing battles that nobody else sees, self-doubt, anxiety, financial stress, relationship struggles. Or maybe your fight is bigger. Injustice, environmental crises, political corruption. Whatever your battle, personal or global, quiet or loud, the question isn't can you win? The question is, are you willing to fight anyway?
Joan said yes. Not because victory was guaranteed, but because doing nothing was unthinkable. She chose action over apathy, courage over comfort, risk over regret. And look what she achieved. A legacy still echoing centuries later, inspiring countless acts of bravery in every generation. Now it's your turn. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If not you, who? If not now, when? You've been handed the playbook, the lessons, the inspiration. You know exactly how courage works. Now the choice is yours. Will you stay safely on the sidelines watching life pass by? Or will you step into your own courage, write your own story, and leave a legacy worth remembering? Joan's courage changed history, but it can also change you. If Joan, a farm girl from nowhere, could alter the course of an entire nation with nothing but stubborn hope and relentless courage, imagine what you can do in your world today. So this is it. Your moment. Take Joan's banner, lift it high, and refuse to put it down. Choose courage, today, tomorrow, and every day after. Because your life matters. Your courage matters. Your choice matters. And years from now, someone else, maybe someone you'll never even meet, will look back at your story and feel courage ignite in their own chest, just as Joan ignited yours. That's how courage lasts forever. Not by being extraordinary once, but by choosing bravery consistently, relentlessly, every single day. So go ahead, choose courage. Now, always, and remember, you were born for this.